Crazy hair. It just kind of does its own thing. That's the absolute best way to open up the live though. Hey everyone, welcome. It's Jeff Robertson with the Second Chance Podcast, and I'm live tonight with a friend of mine, Brenda Neckvatal, and we're going to the whole week. We just recorded, just so everyone knows, we recorded her episode that's coming out in a few weeks with me, and we got to going really good in just scenarios. So I put out some questions or put out some feelers for some human resource related questions so we could bring her. And I was like, hey, why don't we do this live? Pitch this big idea for her to come in and just help our small business owners with some questions that they had that where they can come in and learn from someone who is what I call the ultimate HR bag lady, where she comes in and picks up all your pieces and makes everything magic, sprinkles some dust all around, and everybody's happy. And I don't think that's exactly how it goes, but um, Brenda Neckvatal's with us tonight. I've got 5 questions, and we're hoping you all will share your any questions that you might have with us as well for tonight's episode. But Brenda, tell everyone what you do so they get an idea of where we're getting ready to take tonight's conversation.
Absolutely. So I have been in the field of human resources for over 30 years now. A lot of what I focus in on in today's environment is human resource, or excuse me, human results performance. So I work specifically with leaders to help them really navigate through the people side. So they're not so much focused on people, not so much focused on results. What they're doing is they're actually finding a happy balance somewhere in between. And then what that is really doing for them is it's allowing them to, as things move back and forth within the course of the business, allows them to maintain that balance just simply by shifting against what they're encountering.
Yeah.
That's the best way I can do it. I deal a lot with dealing with difficult people, all the way to building high performing teams.
I would fall under the difficult people category probably. Just for the record, I go back to these moments. Sometimes when I'm talking with employees, back when I had employees, especially at the dealership, where we're all a little more rough around the edges, just because we're kind of still growing up together. And I remember having some conversations with those folks and just different mitigating different areas or problems or what have you, and then sitting there and going, oh my gosh. So now when I see old mentors and leaders and per se bosses of what I had, I'm very quick to apologize and thank them for the tremendous amount of patience they had dealing with me and just helping me navigate, um, coming up and the knuckleheaded side. But man, that is, when do we'll jump in, but when does the owner, when does Brenda come in? Like, do you find yourself like, I really love being on the front side. Let me work with you. Let me help you craft some policies. Let's do some stuff on the front end. Or where do you fall into kind of that owner's life?
So ideally, I have a seat at the table. And, any, if a CEO is looking for the higher performing leaders within their team, be it, coming in from the outside in, it literally is sitting on one side of the CEO, either the left side or the right side, right? Um, I have clients that will call me up and they're like, hey, listen, I got a guy. My phone, I literally nicknamed the Hey Brenda hotline. And and they'll come in and say, hey, listen, I got a guy, or hey, listen, we got a situation, or hey, listen, we got this. And the first thing, like with those clients that I know exceptionally well, I know what their number one business objective is. I know how they are trending financially throughout the year. And I take a look at it through the lens of business acumen first. Because if we're not looking at business first, then there's not going to be anybody to manage. Right, so we have to really understand where the business is going, what the direction the CEO is leading everybody in, and then everything falls in line with that, right? So a lot of people will, honestly, I'm just being honest with you, a lot of people look at HR people as obstacles.
Yeah.
right? And primarily because if you don't have somebody who's business minded, like I just reviewed with you, they're going to be an obstacle. All they're going to do is say everything that is wrong in terms of the HR world. When in fact, what leaders really honestly need, they need somebody who understands how to help them get to their particular wins. We need to win in this area today. How are we going to get there? The last thing that they need to hear is somebody telling them that they can't, right? Now, there are
Yeah.
some things that they want to do, like sometimes they want to do things that are in the best interest of the employee, but it conflicts with what's going on legally. That's when you've got somebody who understands that, okay, we're looking at some duality here. Instead of saying, well, you can't do this and you can't do this, it's like, if this is the outcome you want to achieve, honestly, this is the direction that we need to go for a couple of reasons. One, it mitigates X as a risk. And number two, it gets you to your highest output that you want to reach. And in my recommendation, we want to do this, and this as a buffer, right? So that's what they're looking for. That's what business leaders want. And to have somebody that can sit in either ear and actually be capable of doing that and align with everything continuing moving forward, they will never see an HR person as an obstacle.
Yeah. And I think probably when you put it, when you explain it like that, which is really, I never, I struggled to create a relationship with that human resource side, probably more because I was afraid of the uncertainty. That was the person who ultimately could send me packing, and and they also dictated a lot of, but it was policy, like a lot of policy, just from what we were doing came from HR, so they carried a negative tag. And we didn't do the best of trying to get along sometimes. Either side, I think. Maybe they tried. We were all or I can you may understand this. Like it was hard for us to see their side, and they probably had a better looking back on it. They probably had a better view of our side when it all was said and done from a protection standpoint. But they didn't understand. We always kind of felt like maybe there's a disconnect in what they saw that we were doing. So I think I got my brain working on just like I struggled to probably create those relationships with it with just the HR in general about
Yeah,
but I was yeah.
I get that. And you know what that boils down to, where the gap is, honestly? The gap just simply exists in both sides coming together and just having a conversation,
Yeah.
right? So if you have a really good HR person who's not strong, I mean, you need them to be strong administratively, but also being strong as being able to pick up the ball and run with it, who can sit down. Like the biggest I have been up against some of the most intelligent people in the world that have no idea how to handle individuals, right? And the first thing I do is, like, when I see that there's no trust between leadership and HR, is I start asking, it's like, so what's your greatest, first off, what's your greatest challenge that you're facing today? And then I'm like, so what's the biggest success that you guys have run into? And then they're like, why would you want to know that? And I'm like, clearly you're smart, you know? Let's talk about that. So like it's like, where are your biggest obstacles and what kind of help do you want?
Yeah, that's and I think before we jump into our questions, let's go to the other side of that is you also get called when there's a lot of pieces to be picked up, or there's situations that have evolved into something that is way more. There's a lot at stake. There's either money, and in the case of our episode that folks will get to hear about, there could be jail time. There could be jail time. So how does that roll when you come into that? Like, what's that small business owner? Give us an example of where they have turned a blind eye, maybe fell short in the whatever. Give us an idea of what some things that they can do preventatively to keep that oh crap. So maybe throw out a scenario for us and just that worst how you're called in kind of like to pick up the pieces and to really give that hard strategy of pickup. What does that look like, Brenda?
Probably one of the biggest things in today's environment, I'll just be honest with you, in today's environment, is that leaders are not addressing the real problematic employees,
Hmm.
right? It and there's a couple of reasons why. Number one, they may just simply not know. Let me rephrase this. The first thing is that the leader may not necessarily see a problematic person as being extremely problematic as somebody else in the company, right?
Yeah.
So that is a possibility. They may not recognize that the issue is the same simply because they're not looking through the business in the same way, right? So your leadership, your CEO, your business leaders, your VPs, right? Anybody that has got those two-letter titles, right? Two-word titles, right? Or three.
Yes.
um, that are in it that make decisions of matters of importance in the company. What happens is those folks are flying. Like the CEO is flying at 3,000 feet, right? You're in an airplane. You're flying at 3,000 feet, and when you're up there, you see the horizon, you see the long distance, and you see a more vast landscape, right? You see the market territory, like you see the problems of the industry in general. Then as you're leading, and then that's the direction you should be going in, you have to convey to your downline, so to speak, your chain of command, that they have to see the world they see the world at 25,000 feet to 5,000 feet, because your employees, your frontline employees, for the vast most part of it, they're only looking at 5,000 feet. So they see the streetcars, they see, the railroad tracks, they see a little bit more of the details of everyday life that's going on, where you've got a leader that's flying at 3,000 feet, so 30,000 feet. So there's two different views. So if a person at 5,000 feet is dealing with somebody who's highly problematic, at that same level, the leader's not necessarily going to see the same view. So that can be an issue right there. It's like the leader just doesn't see the same issue or the same intensity, because that person at 5,000 feet, it may be directly impacting their job, or it may just be directly impacting a preference. And so if it's a preference, the leader's not going to see it as the same problem. But if it's impacting a principle, like breaking a policy, an egregious violation of some kind, then that's a little bit different perspective.
And that leads into conflict, right? And then I've been in some teams, like when you to where the boss was or the leader was hoping that the employees was going to work it out themselves, and they stayed out of that situation that was brewing too. So there's sometimes when that eyes
Mhm.
off the situation leads into just compounding the internal problem as well.
I would call that more of a disconnect. So
Okay.
a conflict is when you've got two opposing forces that aren't willing to meet in the middle, right? So if you've got a leader that's not acknowledging the need of somebody, or they're just not seeing the situation as both equally problematic, then that's more of a disconnect. But if it's like the leader and the employee, going head to head, that is a conflict. And there's healthy conflict, and then there's destructive conflict. So it kind of depends on like what it is that is going on. I can go toe to toe with a leader and and argue my position. It can get a little voices raised sometimes, but I also know that it's not about me, it's about the subject matter, right? We're running up against a principle thing here, right? And they're not opposing views, but it could be just two slightly skewed views, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's let's jump into our first question here. It's just
Yes,
about
sir.
hiring and retention.
Mm-hmm.
The question comes in: I run a small business, and it's been tough to find and keep good employees. Big companies are offering higher salaries and remote work, which I can't always compete with. What strategies can I use to attract and retain great talent without breaking the bank?
That is an awesome question. And there's a lot of leaders that are up against that. Honestly, I'm going to tell you right now that employees, really good employees, are going to be totally loyal to your principles and your core values rather than your preferences. So if you are creating a business that has an amazing culture, where you've got the right people in the right job, and money, to them, it's all about environment. Money is, everybody needs money to survive. But those individuals are going to be less about the money and more about the fact that you're meeting an intrinsic need within them, and they are reciprocating right back.
Yeah.
Right, they're appreciative of the fact that they're there. They want to do what's in the best, and what's in the best interest of the company, but there's something about what that leader is doing that is making that and allowing that to actually come forward and come to existence. And usually what that is that you've got somebody who's like working on themselves. They're very conscious about their leadership. They may not do everything perfect, they may not do everything right, but for the vast majority of everything, like, they're hitting the nail.
Yeah.
You know, they've got core values, and they've been very good at aligning the right people to those core values. That's where it starts, because that's the foundation.
I think if you went back and listened to a couple of my, I said the exact same thing with someone the other day, and I'd heard this phrase like, it's like people don't leave bad jobs, they leave bad bosses.
Mm-hmm.
They leave bad leadership. They leave bad culture. Those are the three contributing factors. And it's really good. So when we say that, I always like to give the how to.
Yeah.
When it comes to culture, I'm going to point a couple that you said. One of the things that I left a company the other day is just, hey, but when I come back for our next meeting, have me a mission statement and give me three core values. Don't give me 10. I want you to be able to remember them. Give me 2 to 3 core values that support your mission statement. And that's kind of, we're not, colors are important. The logo is important, but who you are, what your mission is, and what are those 2 things, 3 things that drive that mission that are non-negotiable and you will not falter on. And when it comes down to hiring, firing, celebrating, failing, that you're going to be judged by those core values.
Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, so one of my favorite mentors has this amazing core value that I absolutely love. And it is the number one core value. He uses it within his organization, all of his companies, and he uses it within his family as well. And that core value is never let good be the robber of great. Right?
That's,
I know, right?
that's
Holy
good.
cow, what a mic dropper of a core value. You know, like, and I have another, and what's really amazing about that is that if you really embrace that core value, it just simply means that it's going to require you to do 1% better every single time. When I worked for CarMax, our number one core value at the time, I don't know what it is now today, but we would always live it within the company. And every time we were faced with a decision, it's like, do we take this vehicle back, or how much are we willing to spend to rectify the issue with the customer, right? We would, every time we were up against a decision point, like if you were to look at it like a flow chart, every time we were up against a decision point, we would always ask one question: are we doing what is in the best interest of the customer? Like, that was always the question. That is a core value. I have a friend of mine who's a very successful cleaning business, and he goes into homes, and you know what one of his core values is? Make mama happy.
Mm,
Right? And he's, and
yeah.
look, if anybody's been in the cleaning industry, like, how hard it is to find people. He's got like the A team of cleaners, because he is not afraid to let people go who are not a fit, and the people that are there, he supports completely. Like, he'll bring in different people from different businesses to come in and talk to his employees and do kind of like lunch and learns about how they can improve the quality of their life, right? He will bring people in that are mortgage special, like, I know he's bringing in a mortgage specialist to help these individuals understand it's like, you don't have to rent for the rest of your life. And so what he's done is that he has created this amazing culture of saying, hey, listen, I'm not here to force your hand on how you should live, but I am going to help educate you so that you can have a better life. That's a perk of being with that business. The best thing that he does for that business is make mama happy. That means you can't have bad employees. You have to use the right products. You have to show up on time, right? You have to clean thoroughly. You have to be willing to accept negative feedback when it comes your way, or developmental feedback when it comes back the way. And the other thing too is that he gives people grace to like change things around,
Yeah.
right? It's like, hey, listen, let's let failure be our greatest teacher today. How are you going to fix this? You know? And when he does let somebody go, he's like, hey, listen, you know what? You know, like this may not be for you. Be honest with you, I'm not really quite sure this role is for you. So we're going to go ahead and, let you go. We wish you the best of luck. Take care of yourself, right? He's never mean, nasty, or rude about it. And people love working with him.
Yeah.
Love it, right?
It's a really great example of leadership. Fit Body Boot Camp, inspiring fitness and changing lives every day. Our core values are drive change and exceed expectations. So, as an example, folks, so listen, that's something, you know, if you're training people or if you're getting ready to start a team, this is a conversation you want to start having. And then the next thing I'll add to what Brenda said is follow the hire slow, fire fast. But if you hire slow, 9 times out of 10, you're going to have that right fit for the position that you're feeling. You're going to have a good feel. I used to kind of vet everybody with a couple questions, and all I was looking for is if you were here for yourself or here for the people. If you're
Yeah.
here for the people, you can go to the next phase. And paying attention how they did customer service, making sure they're interactive and not that they could, because we're very outgoing and not everybody's like that. And I get that.
Yeah.
But that's a non-negotiable. You can't come to work there if
Yeah.
you got to be able to go approach people. You got to go talk. Got to ask people their names.
And when you are facing your core values and you're going to have those man and ma'am moments in the mirror,
Yeah.
right? I had a friend of mine. You're going to wind up really running into some very difficult situations, and you have to fall back on your core values. If you don't do it, then you're compromising everything. I had a friend of mine call me up a couple of years ago. He says, "Hey, I really need to talk." I said, "Sure, what's going on?" He said, "Well, I've got a really toxic leader in my company. He is the number one sales producer, and he needs to go. There's an affair that's going on between him. He is married, and this other woman who is also married to somebody else. And he says, I can't have this. I absolutely," he says, "this is completely against everything and anything." And he's and like my second highest leader. And I
Oh
was like,
wow.
okay. I said, "So what are you running up against?" He says, he says, he says, "I'm running against up my own core values." And I'm like, okay. He says, "My core value, my biggest core value in this company is integrity." He said, "If I keep him, I'm going to be violating my core value. If I
Yeah.
let him go, I'm going to be sacrificing $3 million in sales." And I told him, I said, "Well, I applaud you for looking at it this way. Who is the next person that can rise up and take that guy's position?" And he said, "Well, such and such can do it." And I said, "Does that person have the capability of selling the 3 million that if you get rid of this guy?" And he goes, "Well, he's actually capable of selling about 2." I said, "Okay. So you're basically looking at a delta of $1 million. Can your company absorb that?" He goes, "No, the company can't absorb it, but you know what? We can navigate around 1 million. I can't navigate around 3." I said, "Then there's your answer.
Yeah.
That's now what you're really up against, is how can you survive 1 million rather than 3 million?" And he goes, "You know what? You're absolutely right. I know it. I now know exactly what I need to do." And he did. He got the company ready. He looked for gaps. He looked for potential openings. He looked to where, 1 million could unfortunately slide down to 5 in losses, right? He did everything right. He searched it. And when they went through that $1 million delta that was going on, they came through it in a year and they were right back where they were.
Yeah.
And he said there wasn't a moment where it wasn't scary. He said, but I felt better knowing what I was up against and that I had a plan to navigate it. And all we had to do was just shift when the plan wasn't going the direction it was supposed to. And the man worked hard. Everybody worked hard, but they got through it as a team. And ultimately, what happened is that instantly the team became more cohesive, just naturally, by getting rid of a really bad leader like that. He said, "But you know what else it did?" And I said, "You guys were in the trenches, weren't you?" Because we talked about this a couple times. He goes, "Yeah." I said, "The team actually got stronger." I said, "Yeah, it's because you experienced something together on top of it,
You
and
didn't
you
have
got
the
them
negative
through."
culture there keeping you from being in the trenches together either. Nobody wants to be in the trenches with the jerk
No, but you know
in
what?
the butthole.
Everybody saw the benefit of walking through the fire and not getting scorched, rather than being scorched sitting around the campfire waiting for
Yeah.
something to happen.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not. I'll echo that one. Sometimes your top performer, if they're a culture killer, they're keeping your next best hires from coming in. So
Yeah.
when you're, that's a really great point. The next one, Brenda, and this one I taught on this. Taught on it twice this week. One of them, it was in Reno, and it brings up the question on AI. And I taught AI and some integrations for dealerships out in Reno this week. Really well received. It was um, it's a but it's a topic where it creates a lot of uncertainty. And the question is, I'm considering using AI tools to automate some tasks in my business, but I don't want my employees to feel like they're being replaced. How can I introduce AI? How can I introduce AI in a way that enhances productivity while keeping my team engaged and secure in their roles?
Hmm. Yeah, people need to stop listening to the news.
For everybody.
Stop reading mass media that jobs are going to go away because of AI. Look, there's a lot of things that AI is capable of doing, but there's a lot of things that it's not. And one of the things that
Yeah.
it's not capable of doing is interpreting the human condition. Look, did you know? I heard this on Joe Rogan the other day that that they were doing something about unplugging chat, and chat actually tried to duplicate itself. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think people realize that chat's IQ is almost, if not by now, at 180, which is great. It's smart, it's intelligent, and can do things faster and better than we can. But it can't do anything unless we use it. That's the thing.
Yep.
So, the question is, how do we make people embrace it? And that is sit down and work with them to find out, like, what are some of the things that you wish you could do faster and better, that you could, like, die a happy person and never have to do again. And then be like, oh, well, I wish I could do this. Let me tell you, I always joke around and say, if I never have to do another drug screen, I will die a happy woman. Right? If I never have to administer one of those things again, I will die a happy woman. Now, AI can't really replicate that, unfortunately. So it is what it is, right? And thank goodness I don't have to do that stuff now anymore. I won't do it. But the thing is that AI will help me organize my thoughts better. It will help me write in a way that I'm not used to writing. There are things that I use AI for, and that's a big win for it. But AI can't tell me what to expect from somebody who's showing up late every 5 minutes and looking squirrely doing it.
Yeah.
Like, it
That's right.
can't do that. So, you know, AI is one of those things that if you sit down, you got to get everybody's buy-in, but their buy-in is going to be at a completely different level than somebody else's, right? So if you could ask them that question, it's like, if there was something that you could do that you could, like, remove from your plate, what would it be? And then figure out how AI is incorporated into that.
The example I used in teaching it, and I get these questions a lot, and it came up, and there was some reluctancy from the admin side, and I said, where do you struggle? Ask what you just, well, I have to create these emails, and I have to do this, and I have to find it. I'm like, all right. And then where do you make your money? Well, we make our money over here dealing, with customers, but the emails is very important to the customer relations. And I'm like, but do you call? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, well, why don't we start using AI to help you just get the email done? And so the boss was there, lead was there, and the lead was kind of like, it was head nodding with Jeff, and I said, do you is her job creating emails or creating better customer relations? And he said customer relations. And I said, how's the best way to do that? He said, with human interaction. I said, then let's let AI find the voice. You can craft all the email stuff with that, and it really helped them make a difference.
Yeah.
The second thing I'll add to that, Brenda, is it's called human in the loop. It's just AI is not going to function without you, and you are the
No.
human in the loop, and it's amplifier of your authority. Um, so I think when the advice I've gave in the simple situations is, and the other thing you're going to hear, and this is the third thing I wanted to add was you'll hear this phrase, and this came, I can't remember who I heard it from. It may have been Google, and they used the term, AI is not going to replace you, but someone using it will.
Yeah. I like that when you were talking about like just take the person in sales for instance, right? A salesperson is most effective by building the relationship, identifying that individual's need. They can actually, therefore, take that information back, create a profile on a particular individual. Like, hey, listen, I got a chance to talk to Jane Doe today. Here's what I learned about her. And AI
Yeah,
is going to go, check, got it. What do you want to do next? Well, I want to send her a quick email thanking her for coming in and make recommendations on this, and this that we talked about. That's done in 5 seconds.
yeah.
Nobody, no human being can write that kind of copy in 5 seconds. We can't even think about it sometimes, right? So,
Especially if you got part of the content, right? Like
right,
our conversation tonight, AI will be used to help us create
correct.
social posts and all the things from our conversation using the transcripts.
Yep.
That's
And here's the thing, that person that now just time collapsed from writing an email that would have taken them 5 minutes to 5 seconds, the big win for them is that means that they can get back out onto the sales floor faster,
yeah,
and then they can get to that next relationship faster. They can get to that next sale faster. They can get to that next bonus, that next spiff faster. They can tick up those units per month faster. That's the what's in it for me right there. That's the buy-in, right? If they are your drivers and their heartbeat is on the floor, get them away from having to spend too much of that administrative stuff, because if your business isn't selling, you don't have a business, you have a hobby.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then it's directing folks of where we can, what can best benefit the company, and then ultimately, it's just the more money the company makes, the more it gets transferred to the employees and
Yeah.
growth and all those things. So I think it just from an overall, I understand the uncertainty. I've been in those phases in my life to where I was uncomfortable with just where I was and my positions and different things. And as years went on, I learned confidence is if I'm going to be where I'm supposed to be and using the tools I am. So I try to teach that as well. It's just finding some confidence in what you're doing and
Yeah.
know, you're not going to. I look at it as texting, and I pay attention to how we text. And sometimes it gets to the point where you're done and you just pick the phone up and call. And we all, as much as we get away from that human connection and that human type environment, we're back there and we're in the people industry. And that's what we do. That's a really that's going to be something that keeps coming up, folks. And you're only uncertain. You got two folks that are just kind of having a conversation tonight that you can connect with, especially on this AI stuff. Because I spend a lot of time training teams up on how they can deploy it, where they can use it at the most. But then I'm also teaching how we can use some of the talking head video stuff. I've got an avatar for me that's off of this. You'll see some of my videos, but I don't, I use them for training, and that's what I had taught some folks to do is they were just trying to take their policies and procedures and some of their onboarding, and they were like, we have to keep recording these. We don't want to have the time, so it's like scripting in a 3 to 5 minute video, and then you have an AI avatar, and it's really just it's a cool way to
Hmm.
deliver training and some other things. So
Yeah. And you know what you're talking about is an acronym that I use all the time. It's LEAD, LEAD, which is leverage employee assets daily.
yeah, that's awesome. All right, the next one. I told you I was going to say 30 minutes. We're gonna go a little bit longer.
Sure.
Um, just maybe one, maybe two. All right, but we kind of went into that small team conflict, so we'll hold on to that one. It's still got some value there. We kind of touched on it, but here's a good one for you.
Okay.
I don't have a dedicated HR team. This is a lot of small businesses. This is a lot of the conversations that I get to have. I don't have a dedicated HR team, and I'm worried about staying compliant with labor laws, especially with the new workplace regulations changing all the time. What are the must-have HR policies every small business should have in place?
That is not a 5-minute answer. So what I
You
will
did
tell you
next
is
week.
not, because you've got an audience that's also all over the United States, and every state
Yes.
has something unique and different. So here's what I would recommend doing. Most small businesses have a human capital management company that has like a payroll piece of it combined with some leverage of HR. Small business is one of those things that's really kind of interesting. The biggest argument when I was in the human capital management business, I worked for ADP for 5 years. And the one thing that I heard continuously is like, we're too small to get caught. Well, here's the thing. If
Mm.
you have yourself lined up, yes, you are too small to be caught. But when you are caught, it is more expensive than what a big corporation would have to go through. And your pockets aren't nearly as deep, right? So the pain is much greater. So the cost of doing it is much, much, much greater. So first off, leverage your payroll company as much as possible, right? Talk to those representatives, because there isn't a payroll business out there that doesn't have some component of HR to it these days. So you've got HR representation, utilize it. The administrative piece of it, you have to carve out space for somebody to be that gatekeeper, right? If you bring somebody like me in, I'm expensive. Okay. I'm sorry, but I am. I've got 30 years of experience. I have consulted to over 700 small businesses just in HR alone. Combine it with leadership, it's even more. But when you bring somebody like me in, I'm looking for the cracks. I'm here to show you up. It's going to be a bigger deal. It doesn't matter how many people are there. HR is one of those things that people look as they know they need it, and it is a three-headed dragon. So that is my advice, is to put together something to where you're covering your assets and you are putting in what you need to put in for protection. If you don't do it, the consequences are just massive. I mean, literally, I could spend days talking about this stuff.
I have no doubt.
Days, days. Yeah, there's nothing out there that I can give anybody that's quick and rapid. One of the things that I do, believe it or not, have, and they can reach out to me at my website. I have two websites they can get in touch with me on. One is heybrenda.com. The other one is just brendaneckvatal.com. And if they do that, then, or Hey Brenda hotline, that's easier to remember than Neckvatal. So
The
I
best.
keep it easy.
When you get, listen, I posted when you said that's not a question. I posted, so it's on the stream, folks. You've already saw it fly by. Hey, Brenda, and if you go to her website, it is the absolute easiest scroll you'll ever find. It is the best, because I'm like, I'm getting ready to change my entire all the stuff that I put out there, all my little cool little pictures I have, and I'm like, this is the
It's so
best
simple.
ever.
Yeah.
So
So
if
I
you
have
want
I
to
have
get
I have two. It's heybrenda.com and then heybrendaHotline.com. You
if you for the folks out there that get caught in the weeds on how their website, the functionality, and how this has got to be over here and all these things, if you do nothing else in listening to this, go check out her website. It will absolutely, you'll be like, why am I trying to overcomplicate things?
Yes, my websites are labor of love, but man, they're really effective. So, um anyway, I actually do have an HR planner that I publish out every single year.
Yeah.
And it outlines all of the laws that a company has to absolutely follow. For anybody who's in that administrative seat who doesn't really understand what's going on, it's very affordable. It's digital. They can print it out. Yeah, I publish it a new version every year because stuff changes. But
Yeah.
that's a good place to start too, to be completely honest with you. So hit me up in my email at heybrendaHotline.com, and I will be more than happy to send you the link for that.
Yeah, jump on her website and join her mailing list, I'm sure, or something along those lines. And then you got her email now to where you can connect with Miss Brenda. Let me ask you one more question.
Yes, sir.
We'll wrap. We'll walk off with this one
Yeah.
because it speaks to a lot of the things that you and I some of the rooms you and I've been in, with the mental health side of just the workplace.
Hmm.
Last question, um, and for the workplace culture, we kind of addressed that one with
Yeah.
the conflicting employees. So I'm not upset about missing that one. So the last one will walk us off. I've noticed my employees are feeling more stressed and burnt out. As a small business, I can't afford big corporate wellness programs. What are some realistic ways I can support my team's mental health without stretching my budget?
Yeah. So I'm going to give you a foundation to start from. Okay. It's a line of thought, and just know that anxiety is nothing more than the anticipation of future pain.
Yeah.
So what does that mean in the context of business? One of the things that as a business leader that you can do is take a knee and kind of audit your company and figure out how many processes are in place, and do those processes have processes that have processes. If your business is highly processed, remember back when we were in the pandemic, we shut down. And if anybody is listening that's in IT, they're going, how are we going to get everybody's information to them? And all of a sudden, companies were realizing how over processed their processes are.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I would do, because here's what happens. So I'm going to give you another really great example. One of my favorite bosses of all time, he used to do this when I was working at CarMax. I worked at CarMax for 8 years. I worked in the field and I worked at the corporate office.
Yeah.
And Tom was awesome because and he always freaks out every time I talk about him. But Tom, anybody would come running up to Tom and say, "Hey, Tom, I got a really great idea about something." And before he would like really give them a yes or no, they'd say, "Well, I think if we do this, then this will make this process better." He knew that people like to overcomplicate a process, right? We're trying to make it simpler, or we're trying to, squeeze tighter, and ultimately because something has failed, something has slipped by us, and we can't do that, right? So there's a lot of moving parts. And so when there's an element of fear that's involved, what happens is that we put more controls in place. Ultimately, what happens is that we start shrinking this aperture, and this is where leaders have to start opening up the aperture a little bit more, and actually looking and leading beyond what's going on in front of them today. So one of the things that Tom used to do is that he would always ask this question: will it help us sell more cars if we do this? And if they could not say yes, then he would tell them it's not worth us pursuing. So where in your business are your processes over processed? How many layers of stuff has to get done for simple things? Here's another one. How good is your communication?
Mm.
Because communication is going to de-stress a lot.
Yeah.
How many people are engaging in a passive aggressive manner, pretending like everything's in fine, but inside they're all jammed up? Because that's going to create burnout too. If there's no outlet for them to convey where their challenges are, and there's nothing out there that will help them move through it or come to a resolution or make a process better where it doesn't require over processing, or there's something substantial that's going on within the workplace, more is not necessarily better. How can you simplify things in your business? And I've done that with it. I have 4 companies, 5 companies, and I have looked at everything this year, and it's just we're the end of February going into March. I have streamlined so much stuff that has completely eliminated a lot of stress from my shoulders. I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? Like, why was I doing this? And I get it, because in a lot of areas I'm a solopreneur and I have a very small team. I've simplified things for them, but I haven't simplified things for me.
Yeah.
So simplifying is way better. Way better.
The other thing, the other way I've heard, will it help us do more? I've heard that one. That's a really good one. The other one I heard is if we're going to change, I think I heard this coming. I heard it in small business, but I heard somebody in the government side because they're doing their streamlining, through the federal government. It's like if before we make a new if we're going to create a new policy, we have to eliminate 2. I heard someone talking about that. Like if you want to bring in something that's going to help us sell more cars, what's one or two things that we can eliminate that is creating this bottleneck?
Yeah.
Basically, it lets you eliminate you're trying to just clear out the trash of all the, because here's what I learned. I'm the same way. I probably created some unnecessary policies when I was an employee or some different things because I wanted my name on it. I wanted, this is like this. Oh man, they're listening to me. And I get, so next thing you know, we're listening to everyone. And we got a room full of policies and everybody, and you see that sometimes in our local governments. And I don't get to see it on a large scale. I never worked in the state agencies, but I worked locally, and we all sometimes we would come to a grinding halt because everybody felt like they needed to put their stamp on it before it got to the boss because that was their career and they're focused on their career path. And this is the approach that I was mentoring a couple folks in government the other day, Brenda, and I told her, I was like, when we start doing that, when you realize that you're not working for the people and you're not putting out your policies that are pro people and very friendly, but small businesses can choose to go to other counties. They like you, and they're probably, there's a greater 50% chance that they're going to do business with you. But when they're starting up, they don't, if you want to be mean, that gives an example of what they're going to have to deal with in 3 years.
Yeah.
They could go other places and take their business. So I think I look at that from the government side, but on that, just because there's a lot of noise, but I see a lot of small businesses that create those customer bottlenecks
Yeah.
that makes it. And here's what happens in business: if you make it hard for people to give you their money, they're gonna go give it to someone else.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing too is that in my experience, and I'm not going to talk about policies from an operational standpoint, I'm going to talk about policies from a human relations standpoint, or an HR standpoint, is that it is not uncommon that leaders will write a policy to address one person.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, what happens is that everybody else gets penalized, right? If you have to write a policy to address one person, now granted, policies should be put in place when behavior has stepped outside of what somebody would consider the bounds of what's reasonable, right? It's like a soccer game. Policies and leaders are the goalies, right? They keep everybody in play. But if you are writing a policy because of one person, why the hell aren't you addressing the person?
Yep.
If you're writing a policy to address the person, that's passive aggressive. And it's completely ineffective. And everybody's going to know what's going on because trust me, everybody in the office knows who the knucklehead is. Right? Sorry, that's the truth. I have a
There's
client.
probably, so you probably hear some terms sometimes in different circles where they'll call it the Jeff policy.
Yeah. I haven't been in that circle yet.
Yeah, I've got a few that's named after me. There's a
Yeah.
few Jeff policies that exist in the world.
Yeah, and it's funny because when that person leaves, then those policies stay in place.
Stay in place, yeah.
And it's like, I'll do a policy audit years ago, and I would run into, it's like, well, why is this policy here? Well, because we used to have somebody that would do this. It's like, okay, so why is this policy? Well, we used to have somebody do this. So why are you keeping the policies if nobody's
Yeah.
doing it? Like, it's ridiculous. Give people a break. I mean, they're adults. Give them an opportunity to prove it. Here's the thing. I had talked to somebody today, and he's like, "Am I going to be in trouble? Is am I in trouble?" And I'm like, "Look, kids get into trouble. Adults just have a conversation. We're just going to have a conversation today."
Yeah.
You know?
And it's folks don't stop, go back 30 seconds or 15 seconds and listen to that because I used to think everything was life or death. And it's not. Sometimes folks just want to sit down and have a conversation with you. They want to pull some potentials that they see. But they also want to correct some knuckleheadedness. But they also, other folks that are willing to come in and sit down and have those conversations with you, don't take those for granted. Sometimes we're cringe moments, but I used to cringe all the time until I got comfortable and I learned that people were, mainly trying to help me than hurt me.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a lot to be said there, Brent. That's very simple the way you put it, but it carries a lot of weight when you say just having conversations.
Yeah. Just
You
having a
you
conversation.
um I read over what I told you, but I can't thank you enough. And folks, if y'all don't know this, we've already planned or I've planned Brenda's third episode with me, so she'll be back on. She'll be back on. I haven't released her first one yet, and but she'll be back off soon to promote a really cool project that I didn't realize. And so if you're into books, or if you're into publishing, or if you're thinking about writing a book, make sure you tune in for our next episode. And then I just put your link back up. Go to heybrenda.com if you're needing some advice. She's offered up her HR guide and the stuff that she publishes each year. It'd be really simple for you to be able to connect with her there. So, but thank you so much
You're
um,
welcome.
for being here and just answering those handful of questions for the greater good of the small business world that sometimes get stuck in their own way and can't doesn't always have the opportunity to come and sit down and learn from you. So I can't wait to really get this content out and repurpose it and for everyone that couldn't be here tonight. So thank you.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, folks, we're going to wrap up. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. If you're watching this after the fact, it's right around the end of February as we're recording this. So just in case kind of things have changed in our climate from an HR perspective or whatever, we were very broad in our answer, but who knows what might be the case there. But so we can date the episode of where we were in when we had that conversation. But thanks, everyone, and we look forward to catching up with you soon. Thank you.
You're welcome.